Everybody loves fantasy football, but this talk is not about fantasy football. It's about theme parks because theme parks are my fantasy football. Now, the week of pandemic, I was working at a theme park. And on top of that, I was going to a theme park almost once a week with passes to many Southern California theme parks. I have a dream one day to go on a theme park world tour, exploring as many theme parks as I can throughout much of the earth as I can. And when there's a theme park in space, sign me up. Now, how did I become so obsessed with theme parks? Let's dive in. I'm a huge theme park enthusiast, and I go on theme park tangents all the time. I mean, we're also not talking about just going to theme parks, but researching theme park history for fun. Seriously. It all started back in elementary school when I wanted to be a theme park engineer, but I can't draw and I'm not great at physics or big kid math, so I decided to live vicariously through theme parks. I even did a 7th grade project in my geography class on Denmark, but the whole project more or less was just me talking about the theme park Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen. Now, that's all fine and dandy, Spencer, but what makes you qualified to talk about theme parks? Well, let's see. I have over 50 roller coaster credits, which means I've been on more than 50 roller coasters of all kinds. Kiddie coasters, shuttle coasters, inverted coasters, and more. I have a certificate in hospitality and tourism management from Florida Atlantic University, which I, ironically enough, received online during a pandemic. Now, while theme parks and many hospitality spots were closed. I teach an extracurricular course to elementary and middle school students all about amusement park science, and I've worked in marketing and performing at theme parks, and I've traveled to many different theme parks in California, Georgia, Florida, and Virginia, just to name a few. Oh, and I recently launched a theme park podcast where my co-hosts and I pitch our own theme park ride and attraction ideas to guests in the hospitality, tourism, and theme parks industries as we compete to get the most points and bragging rights. Kind of like fantasy football, if you will, but for theme parks. Because again, theme parks are my fantasy football. Now, a couple little fun facts and vocabulary here. The shortest lived amusement park in the entire world is Pripyat Amusement Park, located in Pripyat, Ukraine. Sources say it was set to open in May 1986, but operated for a few hours in April 1986 before an announcement to evacuate was made due to the oncoming Chernobyl. Unfortunately, Pripyat was destroyed by Chernobyl and never reopened, and remnants of the attractions in the park still live in the area with varying levels of radiation in the city. Now, that being said, let's take a look at some other terminology, and this one leads me to yet another unfortunate natural disaster event that wiped out another theme park staple. SBNO stands for standing but not operating. This is when a theme park ride or attraction or theme park itself still exists in the physical world but is not in operation. One of the biggest, most high-profile examples of a theme park that is standing but not operating is Six Flags New Orleans, formerly known as Jazzland. Unfortunately, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina swept through New Orleans and demolished most of the theme park. Originally, there were plans to reopen the site, but the cost of updating and maintaining would cost more than the government wants to spend. As of 2021, it is currently still standing but not operating, 16 years after it was completely destroyed by a natural disaster. Now, for a while, it was abandoned, and many YouTube creators would sneak in to film the aftermath. And it got so bad that the city now has security and police officers on standby to arrest trespassers, even despite the fact that the whole theme park is not even open. Now, here's another term, defunct. Defunct means a theme park attraction or ride no longer exists. It has been torn down or completely demolished. This is not when rides, attractions, or theme parks get rethemed, but rather are completely non-existent anymore. Now, I want you to turn your attention to one of my childhood memories, one of my favorite theme parks growing up in Florida. It's called Miracle Strip Amusement Park. Fun for many reasons. There were some creative rides, including an old school haunted house, trick trap door kind of style dark ride, a scrambler ride inside an abominable snowman, and a tilt-a-whirl in the dark called the Dungeon, as well as an aerial music express, which is a ride where everyone sits in like a train style car that just spins around and around and around for 3 minutes, but in the dark called Dante's Inferno. Now, of course, amusement parks wouldn't be complete without science. There's a lot of science that goes into making theme park rides, but I'll just give you a little touch. We'll just touch on it a little bit. Okay, rides and attractions are tons of fun, but they're not all just fun and games, right? There's a lot of scientific terms, like I just said. There's a lot of them like force, inertia, friction, Newton's 3 laws of motion, centripetal force, centrifugal force, kinetic and potential energy, and many more. But I'm not a scientist, nor do I really understand science, so I won't go into detail about what any of these are. But that feeling of weightlessness you get in a ride, that all goes back to energy, gravity, inertia, and many other scientific elements. But in theory, Newton's 3 laws of motion can be applied to almost any ride, but in particular, bumper cars. Newton's first law, Objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and objects in rest tend to stay at rest unless acted upon by another force. Think when you're in a bumper car and you get bumped from behind when not driving. You move, right? Thus, the first law is in play. Newton's second law. Force equals mass times acceleration. Essentially, a smaller person, such as a child or a lightweight individual, I will tend to get thrust further than a larger person, say a 6-foot-tall male or a large elephant in a tie. Because while the force may be consistent, the amount of mass, or for lack of a better term, weight of an object, in this case, a person or an elephant in a tie, determines how quickly and how far that bumper car will move. Therefore, Newton's second law is in play here with bumper cars. And Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This is pretty self-explanatory, but think of it in this way. A car getting hit in the back causes it to propel forward, thus causing a reaction from the original action. So again here, Newton's third law of motion is in play. Bumper cars are a great example of Newton's laws of motion and action and reaction. Anyway, that reason you stay in your seat when you're going on a loop or staying in place in a gravitron, that's due to many things, including gravity and centripetal force. Have you ever put water in a cup and spun it really fast upside down? Now, when it stays in, that's because of the centripetal force, not because of the seatbelt you're in or the harness you're wearing keeping you in place. Along with the science, there's a lot of math that goes into creating a roller coaster, for example. Now, for example, this is the equation for solely solving for a singular, circular, regular vertical loop in a roller coaster. Just one part of it. It's A sub c equals v squared divided by r equals 2 times g times h divided by r, where h is the distance from the highest point of the roller coaster and r is the local radius of curvature. Don't ask me to solve it. Don't ask me to explain it. I'm not great at math, science, or engineering, or even drawing for that matter, which might be why I'm so fascinated in theme parks to begin with. Now, something interesting when it comes to the path of a roller coaster on a track or our perception of certain movements of rides is based on the Coriolis effect. And as scijinks.gov puts it, in simple terms, the Coriolis effect makes things like planes or currents of air or roller coasters, I added that part, that's not actually in the definition, I added that, traveling long distances around the Earth appear to move at a curve as opposed to a straight line. It's a pretty weird phenomenon, but the cause is simple. Different parts of the Earth move at different speeds. Speaking of speeds, now for something fun. I want to talk about many of the most common and popular types of inversions and roller coasters because, believe it or not, there are many, and this is just a handful of the types of inversions a rider may experience. And I've got a little PowerPoint to show you some of the different types. So let me pull it up here. Going to share this, start the slideshow. So we got a bunch of different ones, right? This is a bat wing. This is a bat wing which is shaped for the fact that it looks like the wing of a bat. Very simple. Next one, banana roll, because it looks like the shape of a banana. And yes, that is a upside down, all the way down kind of situation there. It's banana roll. Moving on to a vertical loop. This is just a regular old vertical loop. This is one of the most popular, one of the most common ones of all of the loops, all the inversions. This one, you might recognize it, you might not. This is a cobra roll because it looks kind of like when cobras have their thing, you know, I'm not good with science or snakes, but they got their frills up. It's kind of like a cobra. This is a helix because it looks like the shape of a helix. That's what it is. Here is a dive loop. It's a dive loop. Very basically, you dive down, and you go upside down right before that dive. This is called a heartline roll. Now, what this actually does is the way it's made is that you're actually still going basically parallel to the actual track, which causes your heart to literally roll, henceforth, because it rolls right across the heartline roll, henceforth a heartline roll. This is an Immelman loop named for Max Immelman, a famous World War II fighter pilot, and the way that he did his loops when he was on his plane. So that's called an Immelman loop. And this one is called a pretzel loop because it kind of looks like a pretzel knot. Now, I want to tell you a story. Take a look at this right here. This is a ride called Tatsu, and this has the largest pretzel loop in the world. And I want to tell you a tiny little story about this one that I think will be, it's a little TMI because I'm going to talk a little bit about vomit. So just bear with me here for a second. This is Tatsu. It's a flying coaster, which has the largest pretzel roll in the world. I've conquered it, by the way. As someone with Coates disease or a vision impairment, My body feels the world in a different way and completely sees the world in a different way than the accessibility of a roller coaster generally allows. Now, while flying element of Tatsu did not bother me, that pretzel roll really did a number on me. Not only does your body flip upside down because it's an inversion, but your whole body is entirely flipped because you're flying. So you're on your back. So it's a flying coaster. So when you're flying, you're literally feels like you're flying. Anyway, it was a rough pretzel loop that many people enjoy because of how disorienting it can be. But for me, it caused some motion sickness. And speaking of motion sickness, let's dive into that, shall we? Riders have different levels of tolerance. And while some people have bodies made of steel, others are a bit more sensitive to inversion, speed, G-force, etc. Here are just some of the experiences a rider can have that are common feelings after riding a roller coaster. But remember, not everyone experiences these, and some have experiences much more intense than others. Bear in mind, however, that roller coasters are generally some of the least vomit-inducing rides because of their numerous movements. But for a Dramamine, ibuprofen-riddled theme park goer, let me tell you some of the things either I have personally experienced or what others I know have experienced. Of course, motion sickness. Motion from a vehicle or other movement disturbs the inner ear, which is perceived by the vestibular system, which causes a sense of unbalance in the body, much like what happens with my unbalanced vision on a daily basis. Vertigo, a sensation of feeling off balance, causing a lot of dizzy spells, feeling like you're spinning. This is how I felt after that pretzel loop on Tatsu. And by the way, I said this was the day that I vomited for the first time ever at a theme park. And I feel like it's an exciting experience, but it's just, I got that little check mark safe from theme park vomit that day on Facebook, Anyway, I won't get too TMI on you, but let me just say, I held that vomit for approximately a minute and a half on a ride while waiting to offload, literally in my mouth, and then offloaded my chunks into the bushes later. Anyway, enough about that. Red outs. A red out is a redding of the vision when the body is accelerated downward, attributed to congestion of blood in the head, oftentimes on big drops. So like really big drops, sometimes a little too fast for people. Gray outs, a temporary loss of vision and perceived dimming light and color, which is often a precursor to fainting. This often occurs with a lot of G-force. If you're going faster than you should be on those coasters, your body can't handle it. Blackouts, very common with a lot of G-forces. That is not usually force on a body on a typical basis, can cause people to black out for short periods of time because of the force exerted on the body and the brain. Now, blacking out on rides means you should consult a doctor before going back on theme park rides, but to combat some of these experiences, you can wear compression socks, over-the-counter medications like Dramamine and ibuprofen and Tums, and I take them with me all the time, and they're wonderful. They work wonders. Eat bread and crackers prior to going on rides, using high-carb, low-fat foods. Acupressure on your own body. Look straight ahead if you're on the ride, but close your eyes to eliminate visuals only if that doesn't intensify the feeling. For me, closing my eyes does not work. All right, quick statistics. Here we go. Some fun facts, some statistics. The fastest roller coaster in the world is Formula Rossa at Ferrari World Abu Dhabi, which reaches a speed of 149 miles per hour. The tallest roller coaster in the world currently is King Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey, which stands 456 feet tall. The same height is approximately, get this, 150 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty's highest point. On the contrary, Teeny Weeny at a theme park in Norway that I cannot pronounce is the smallest roller coaster in the world at just over 6 feet tall, or basically as tall as me standing up. The world's longest roller coaster in the world is Steel Dragon 2000 in Japan at Nagashima Spa Land, running over 8,000 feet and over 4 minutes long. Now, to give you an idea, that's the equivalent of the length of 91% of the Golden Gate Bridge, about 232 full-size buses toe-to-toe, or 13,224 pencils stacked start to finish. And the shortest roller coaster, as far as I know, is another ride that I can't pronounce in Norway, which is just 85 feet long. That's it, only 85 feet total. Now, the longest drop also ranks back to King Ka, which is 418 feet. So you're dropping down 418 feet. The roller coaster with the most inversions is the Smiler, which has 14 inversions, including multiple before even the first lift hill. Now, Dismaland was a Banksy art exhibit that had actual attractions based on your basic theme park designs and ride types, such as the guess your weight type game and the waiting in line experience where people actually waited in line to get tickets. So it's technically both a theme park and an anti-theme park. Now, here's a little bit of magic from behind the scenes. As a former and potentially current and future theme park employee, I'm going to reveal a couple of secrets, not necessarily secrets that theme parks don't want you to know, but things that you may not know. If you don't, you'll know now. And if you do, you too can share this magic with everyone. As an employee, security can be a little loose. As long as you have your ID on you. As long as you have that ID card attached to your person, you can kind of walk around wherever you want, no questions asked. It's quite the privilege, but it's also quite intimidating because you never know what or who you might encounter on your journey. But that ID card, that badge, lets you roam pretty much free reign. Now, believe it or not, those team members, cast members, employees who are asking you to take a survey upon your entrance into the park, or those who are asking you to just take a quick picture with no requirements to purchase anything, yes, they do have quotas. I know because I used to work as a market research interviewer, and we could not take a break until our group collectively reached our numbers or we individually reached our individual goals. Now, the flip side to that is that the more we are able to reach or exceed our goals, the bigger the goals become. So it becomes harder and harder and harder every single time. Usually, there's a lot of success with asking guests to take a survey, but we are often trained to say, it'll only take a minute. I don't like stretching the truth by minimizing the time, so I'm generally honest with the guests. It'll take about 5 minutes or so, depending on how quickly you answer the questions. It's not a lie. Sometimes it's shorter, but often it lasts between 3 to 4 minutes. Now, why do I say 5? Well, it's because when we finish in 3 or 4, the guests are grateful for me getting the survey done with them sooner. Reverse psychology, huh? Anyway, it doesn't always work because 5 minutes often turns many folks away, but for those that help out, it really helps us out. Other secrets include going to the first aid. Oh, first aid, this is fun. And asking for any sort of over-the-counter medications you might like if you get sick on a ride or have some motion sickness or just get a headache from the heat. Most theme parks' first aid buildings will treat you like royalty because they want you to enjoy your day at the park. But they will also turn down requests based on your symptoms or what you're feeling and recommend a better option. Because again, it's all about the guest experience. Now, overall, guests are treated with the highest respect because we want them to be engrossed in our world, enjoy their time in the park, and return and tell their friends to come. And as much as we as employees want to solve everyone's problem and create the best guest experience, there's only so much we can do in 2018 when we have to tell our guests that when asking where the ET ride is in Universal Studios Hollywood, oh, sorry, the ET ride actually closed 14 years ago. We love our guests, but please do your research because we literally can't fix everything. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.